My father, late 50s, left my mom when I, 20 male, was a toddler, and my sister was a newborn baby. Mom had had mental health problems after this, and we were instead raised by our grandpa, Dad's dad, and Grandma until her passing when I was 7. Grandpa died last year, and I took over as legal guardian for my sister. Grandpa had nothing to do with my deadbeat father. However, he was aware the deadbeat had married and fathered other children in the last 5 years, but it changed nothing for him because he didn't look too kindly on a man who would abandon 2 children the way my father did. He literally left the country to evade child support and refused contact with his family for years. He also emptied out all the money he and my mom had before he left us, so he left us with literally nothing. When Grandpa drew up his will, he investigated how he could leave my father with nothing, but that wasn't an option. However, he didn't need to leave him with more than $1, and that's what he did. The portion that would have been my father's was divided between my sister and me. He also left the house to my sister and me. My estranged father attempted to fight the will and get the share my sister and I own, but he was denied because my grandfather did everything above board. My father's siblings ended up back in contact with him after Grandpa died, and while they're not as close as before, they have a relationship that my sister and I have no interest in being a part of. So here is where the moral question comes in. My father has a child who has a life-limiting medical condition. He and his wife struggle to keep their heads above water with 4 young kids and little money. He feels I should give him my share of the inheritance for the sake of the kids, believing Grandpa was wrong not to think of them at all in his will. He left nothing to my deadbeats other children. I told him he wasn't getting anything from me, and then my father's siblings got involved. They feel I should give him my share and that having the house and my sister having the money should be good enough. But I could do it as an act of kindness for other siblings I refuse to meet or get to know. I've been under some intense pressure over this, and it's all driven by the illness and condition that one of his children has. I know that's the only reason my aunts and uncles are so bothered about it. Am I the idiot? Grandpa knew what he was doing. You said Grandpa knew he had other children but left his first 2 and drained the bank account and purposely acted in a way to not have any financial responsibility to you, your sister, or Mom. Grandpa specifically left it to you and your sister. Your deadbeat dad is facing the consequences of his actions now. Tell your father and his flying monkeys that the inheritance you and your sister received was a back payment to cover some of the child support your father ran out on and the money he stole from your mom. And the house was because he was trying to make up for raising such a crappy son. You're not the idiot, but please talk to a financial advisor to make the money last. I guess it's back pay for abandoning you, your sister, and your mom. On top of that, who does your donor think he is, coming around after abandoning you for years and trying to fight for your inheritance? He can skedaddle like he did all those years ago, LOL, and your aunts and uncles, since they're so bothered about your siblings' illness, tell them to pay for all the medical fees. Don't give them a dime, OP. I, 21 female, was introduced to a woman, 30s, at my younger brother's baseball game. She's related to one of the players. I have a 3-letter name, which is fortunately not common or overused, but it's not weird at all. It's easily pronounced. This woman frowned when I introduced myself and said, "What a strange name. I wouldn't name my child that." I was shocked to hear this from someone since my name is lovely. But even worse, the woman has a very basic, overused name. Think Maddie, Kate, etc. So she's not someone who should be judging names. I laughed incredulously and said, at least my parents cared enough to come up with something original and not a name every other kid on the playground probably has. That was probably embarrassing growing up. And genuinely, I'd be embarrassed to have such a basic, boring name as this woman. No hate for people with overused names. She was very offended and started gossiping with the moms near her. My mom said I shouldn't have said that since it's a travelling team, so we have to spend the weekend with these people. But she privately agreed that the woman's name is dumb and overused and said herself that lady's parents didn't love her enough to put some thought into her name. Am I the idiot? I'm sorry, are you really saying that having a common name indicates not being loved? What in the heck? I'm absolutely flabbergasted. Having a common name has nothing to do with love, that's just spiteful. You are the idiot. You didn't like this woman being rude and judgmental about your name, so you were rude and judgmental about her name. You were so close to being the better person here, and you couldn't. Dude, I don't understand your reasoning of having a common name equals your parents didn't love you. The opposite could be true. If your parents give you an odd or unique name, it could be argued they don't love you enough to spare you from being bullied and having people comment on your name, which is literally what happened to you in this story. Many countries don't allow people to name children weird names. It's literally illegal. My husband John, 40 male, and I, 26 female, have been together 5 years, married for 3, and have 3 kids, an infant, a toddler, and a preschooler. We met when I was still in college, working full-time as a nanny for his friend's family. We crossed paths a few times at my nanny's family's functions, and my nanny's family gave him my number and encouraged me to go out with him. Initially, I only did so because I didn't want to offend them, but we ended up hitting it off really well. I accidentally got pregnant with my oldest about a year into seeing him. 3 kinds of birth control and still got pregnant. What are the chances? At first, I was devastated because I was just about to graduate and had already been offered an amazing internship in my field. The internship would require me to move across the country, so I was already planning to leave my current job and break up with John so I could pursue my dream job. So my initial plan was to terminate the pregnancy. However, long story short, I ended up staying with John and having my oldest, but under the agreement that I would start working ASAP and John would pay for childcare, so I didn't have to be a stay-at-home mom and permanently walk away from career goals that I'd worked very hard toward for basically my whole life. As soon as my son was born, I fell instantly in love, and the few resentments I had about how things turned out completely disappeared. While I did stay home with him for the first year because I couldn't stand to leave him for more than a few hours, I was open with John about my plans to find a job in my field as soon as I could, and he was always on board and never expressed any issue with it. John and I got married when my oldest was 1, and John started pushing me to have more kids, but I refused because I felt ready to start working. I got a great job offer at the company I'm still with today. I started looking for nannies and was put in contact with our current nanny, Sarah, 21 female. She's honestly been a godsend. She's the sole reason I made it through being apart from my baby, and she does such an amazing job. I honestly cannot imagine my life without her. Shortly after I started my job, I accidentally got pregnant again, another birth control baby. My husband tried to talk me into staying home with the kids again after my second was born, but I was too happy with my job. They offered to let me work part-time from home, which worked out perfectly. My husband wanted to cut back Sarah's hours as I would be home a lot more, but I refused because while I'd be able to breastfeed and help take care of my newborn, I still wanted her there to help with our rambunctious toddler while I was working. Sarah and I get along great. We have a lot in common, and I see her as a friend as much as an employee. My kids love her very much and ask about her whenever she isn't there. Since I was also a nanny, I'm able to work with her effectively and have so much respect and admiration for the job she does with my kids, as she's even more patient and hands-on than I ever was with my nanny's family's kids. Even though we pay her a lot, I honestly think she's worth even more than that, and I tip her as much as I can. For some reason, my husband doesn't feel the same way. He's very critical of her. Not to her face, he has very little interaction with her as most days she leaves before he gets home. He's always nitpicking how she does things, like if a few toys get left out in the playroom, if she used too much gas in the car, if she got fast food for the kids instead of cooking them a meal, etc. He tells me she's not worth what we're paying her and that she's doing an easy job I was fine doing for free. This irritates me like nothing else because while yes, I don't find looking after my kids particularly difficult, I wouldn't call it remotely easy, and it's much different when it comes to dedicating most of your free time to looking after someone else's kids. And Sarah goes above and beyond to make sure my kids are safe, happy and entertained every day, and even does some pre-schooling with them. Last week, my husband confronted me with some footage from our security cameras of Sarah neglecting our kids. The whole thing was completely ridiculous. There was one video where she left my toddler in her high chair crying for 5 minutes while taking my preschooler to the bathroom 3 feet away. There was one where she let them stay up past bedtime to finish a movie while she worked on schoolwork. All relatively innocuous things like that I couldn't care less about. The worst of it was a video of her texting on her phone for about 30 minutes while my kids were playing, which we've asked her to not be on the phone while playing with the kids. But even though she technically did something wrong, she's a human being. She's not going to be perfect 100% of the time. Once he was done showing me, I asked him, "Is the neglect in the room with us right now?" And that made him really mad. He accused me of not caring about our children's well-being because I would agree with him that we need to fire her if I did. I told him we were firing her over my dead body, and if it wasn't for her, our children would actually be neglected because we both work full-time. He told me that Sarah was trying to take over my role as a mother in my children's eyes, and she was coming between me and our family, and if I cared about our family, I would want to fire her too. I laughed in his face and told her I would rather divorce him and pay for her myself than fire her and quit my job. He stormed out and hasn't spoken to me since. Am I the idiot for refusing to fire my nanny? Not the idiot. Sounds super suspicious that you got pregnant so often on birth control and incredibly convenient timing. Like he was trying to baby trap you into being a young traditional wife. Birth control has a lot of things that could render it less effective, like heat. He's trying to control you and your power. If you don't have a job, he controls all the money. Don't give in. The age difference is showing. Oh dear Lord, there's nothing as blind as those who can't or won't see. OP, open your eyes and see what your husband has been doing to you for the past few years. You were never intended to be a working wife. You were chosen very carefully by this man. You were chosen all those years ago by a man nearly 20 years your senior to be molded into what he wanted. He wasn't interested in your career goals. It sounds like you ticked all of his boxes for the mother of his children. You are no doubt very pretty and obviously intelligent. You're young enough to have plenty of children for him, etc. His plan was for you to be his brood mare, stay at home with his kids and look pretty. Where he slipped up, thank God, is that you are obviously a very determined young woman. He either didn't factor that in or was confident you would be too busy with the babies. Yeah, and an accidental pregnancy when you're on 3 types of birth control, twice? Really? Do you really truly believe he never ever interfered with your birth control? He's really determined to tie you to that kitchen sink, isn't he? Now it's your nanny he's trying to get rid of. He'll maybe accuse her of stealing next or something equally as heinous. Or your job is going to be targeted. I really hope you have your own bank account and are in charge of your money. You'll need a fund ready for when you wake up, smell the coffee, and realize you've been baby-trapped and your future career prospects torn away from you. Update: am I the idiot for refusing to fire my nanny? Thank you so much to everyone who has offered advice and support. I'm trying to read over everyone's comments and process everything. Honestly, I thought this was just an annoying ongoing argument between my husband and me about our nanny, but you all have opened my eyes to a much deeper issue. Firstly, I want to say I'm a bit worried it came across like I resent getting pregnant or having kids because I really don't. I love my kids more than anything, and I wouldn't trade them for the life I wanted before or choose my job over them if it ultimately came to that. I do stress about accidental pregnancies a lot because it makes me feel out of control of my own life and body. Still, I hope that doesn't come across as me having regrets over them. On that note, however, a lot of people have pointed out the possibility of my husband tampering with my birth control. This has really shaken me up, so I'm not going to lie. The scariest thing about this is that he's a medical professional and started writing my scripts for me after we got married, and he often recommends and prescribes me supplements and things for my health. He also convinced me that IUDs were dangerous and ineffective, and that it's not uncommon to get pregnant on if you're extremely fertile. I don't even want to think about the implications of him having messed with something to get me pregnant. I trust him a lot with medical decisions and opinions. While I know he's not as vigilant about birth control as I am, I didn't even consider the chance he was actively sabotaging it. I'm not really sure where to go from here or how to investigate this further. Many of you were concerned about having an emergency fund or safety plan, and I do keep my finances separate from his. Luckily, I make good enough money that I could leave if I really needed to. Thank you again to everyone. Every time this relationship has progressed to the next big step has been against OP's initial wishes. I'm feeling like John has been subtly steering things from the start. Run, OP, run. This man will keep you pregnant and in the kitchen for your entire life if he can. Oh my god, I didn't even catch the age difference at first. Some families are like, let's fix up our 20-year-old nanny with a 34-year-old. Jesus, the whole thing just seems like he wanted someone young and naive who would do what he wanted and who he could control through money. At least OP was smart enough to stick to her guns on having her career and going to work. I think the idea of ditching the husband and keeping the nanny is spot on.